One of the most common things struggling learners are told, either directly or indirectly, is to try harder. And that advice usually comes from a good place. Parents want to help, teachers want to support, everyone wants the child to succeed. But when it comes to literacy difficulties, trying harder doesn't fix the problem, and in some cases it can actually make things worse. So in this video, I want to explain why that is, what's really going on underneath literacy struggles, and what helps instead. If you find this kind of content useful, you can like the video or subscribe. So let's get into it. On the surface, telling a child to try harder makes a lot of sense. If something's difficult, we naturally assume that effort is the missing piece. That works for a lot of things, like learning a new sport, practicing an instrument, or building stamina over time. So when a child is struggling with reading or writing, it feels reasonable to think that more effort, more practice, or more concentration will fix it. The problem is that literacy isn't just about effort. It relies on a whole set of underlying skills working together at the same time. And when one of these skills isn't fully developed, effort alone can't compensate for that. One of the biggest misunderstandings around literacy difficulties is the idea that they're caused by a lack of motivation. In reality, most learners who struggle with literacy are already trying extremely hard. They're concentrating more, putting in more effort, and often feeling more pressure than their peers. The difficulty isn't that they don't care, it's that the task is demanding skills that haven't been fully developed yet. And when we mistake skill difficulty for a motivation problem, we end up applying pressure in the wrong place, and instead of helping, that pressure can actually make learning feel even harder. Literacy tasks place a huge demand on working memory. When a child is reading or writing, they're often trying to do several things at once, remembering letter sounds, blending those sounds together, thinking about spelling, holding ideas in the head, and physically reading or writing. That's a lot for the brain to manage all at the same time. Even when a learner is putting in maximum effort, there's a limit to how much their working memory can hold. Once that limit is reached, trying harder doesn't improve performance, it increases overload. And that's when we start to see mistakes, frustration, or complete shutdown, not because the child isn't trying, but because the task is becoming too heavy. When effort doesn't lead to success, learners start to draw conclusions about themselves. They hear things like, try harder, focus, or you can do this if you really try. And over time, those messages can start to feel personal. Instead of thinking, this is hard, learners begin to think, I'm bad at this. And that can quickly turn into, I'm no good at school, or even, I'm not very smart. This isn't a lack of resilience or confidence. It's what happens when difficulty is misunderstood. When effort is mistaken for ability, learners end up blaming themselves for something that isn't within their control. Pressure doesn't just affect how learners feel, it affects how their brains work. When a child feels anxious or worried about getting something wrong, their working memory has even less space to operate. Anxiety increases cognitive load, and that makes reading and writing harder, not easier. Fear of mistakes can also lead to avoidance. Learners may rush, shut down, or refuse tasks altogether, not because they don't want to learn, but because they're protecting themselves from failure. So when pressure increases, performance often drops. This is why pushing harder rarely leads to progress. It creates the exact conditions that make literacy more difficult. What actually helps struggling learners isn't more pressure, it's the right kind of support. That might mean breaking tasks into smaller, more manageable steps, or reducing the amount of reading or writing a child is expected to do at one time. It can also involve using visual supports or hands-on materials, or explicitly teaching skills that are often assumed rather than explained. Giving learners more time, reducing unnecessary demands, and separating effort from outcomes all help create conditions where learning can happen. These adjustments don't lower expectations, they remove barriers, and when the task becomes accessible, effort starts to work again. Effort still matters, but only when the task is actually accessible. When a learner has the right support in place, effort leads to progress. Without that support, effort just leads to exhaustion. So reframing effort means shifting the question from "are they trying hard enough" to "are we asking them to use skills they're not ready for?" When expectations are matched to development, effort becomes productive again. And that's when learners start to experience success rather than constant struggle. If you're a parent or teacher watching this, it's important to say this clearly. Literacy difficulties are not caused by a lack of effort, not from learners and not from adults supporting them. When trying harder hasn't worked, it doesn't mean someone has failed. It means the approach didn't match the need. Shifting away from pressure and towards meaningful support isn't giving up. It's how progress actually happens. And when learners feel understood and supported, they're far more likely to engage and keep going. Understanding why trying harder doesn't fix literacy difficulties helps us to move away from pressure and towards support that actually works. When learners are given the right tools and the right conditions, effort becomes meaningful again. If you'd like to read more about this or access practical resources that support literacy in a realistic way, you can find them on my website, the link is down below. And if you want more clear, neuro-affirming guidance around dyslexia and learning, you can subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and remember, difference does not mean deficit.